3 people remain in hospital after more than 20 overdosed on drugs during a Melbourne music event on the weekend. They were treated after taking what is believed to be the synthetic drug GHB during the Electric Parade Music Festival at the Sydney Myer Music Bowl on Saturday night. Well, joining me from Melbourne is Dr Stephen Bright, who's a senior lecturer in addiction with Edith Cowan University. Dr Bright, another overdose, albeit a pretty big one. Is it just a bad batch, or are there some truth to these suggestions that this was actually a derivative of GHB?
It's possible that it's a derivative of GHB, although I suspect that the reason why there was such a high level of overdoses at this event was related to a couple of things. One, the event was held in Melbourne City and GHB doesn't come up in drug drive tests. It's short acting, it's extremely euphoric, it's often used at festivals, and there's a fine line between the euphoric effects and overdosing on the drug, and that can be exacerbated when it's mixed with alcohol. In addition to that, there were no harm reduction facilities on site. So at most festivals, Harm Reduction Victoria offer services where they work with the paramedics to provide people with education around how to minimise overdosing on drugs like GHB, provide people with syringes so that they can measure out the amount of GHB that they're taking, and also provide a safe space where we can look after people who are potentially going into an unconscious state, keeping them conscious so that they're not required to be taken to hospital, thus reducing the demand on paramedic services.
Because ultimately, those who take the drugs, obviously that's their responsibility, but it sounds to me like you're saying that authorities could have done more on their part.
Well, the event organiser could have invited the harm reduction organisers to the event, and that probably would have had a significant impact on reducing the number of people that required hospitalisation. It would have reduced the demand on the paramedic services, and it may have potentially had an overall beneficial effect, because people would have been given information and education on how to stay safe when using this particular drug, avoiding mixing it with alcohol, and as I said earlier, being provided with ways of measuring it out so that they're not taking unknown doses.
It's interesting what you said before about the fact that it can't be tested if they were pulled over for drug driving, for example, or any tests there. Why is that? Just because it's not on there, or is it to do with the fact that it's a synthetic drug?
No, we only test for a couple of drugs for drug driving. MDMA, methamphetamine, cannabis are the key ones. And so had this event been out in the outskirts of Melbourne, probably there would have been less GHB use and more use of MDMA, because people have time to recover from the event and then are able to drive home. Because the event was held quite centrally, some people might have driven to the event and thought GHB was a drug that they would be able to use and be able to drive home from the event without being pulled up for drug driving.
Of course, it's reignited this debate that comes up time and time again when these events happen of pill testing. Would that sort of thing work? Because authorities do say, or the state government in Victoria says, you know, it takes a long time to get a proper printout of what is actually in a drug, and it just wouldn't be practical at a music festival.
That's actually not quite correct. We definitely have the technology now to be able to provide information to people within 15 minutes to half an hour, and most people that have been surveyed have indicated that they're willing to wait that time. With this particular event with GHB, what drug checking might have facilitated was assisting people to know how pure the GHB they were taking was, and in turn that might have impacted on their behaviour with regard to how much GHB they took.
So that's to do with the fact that if it was this derivative, for example, of GHB known as GBL, it actually has a slower release time in the body. So when they were expecting to get a high and it wasn't coming, they would take more of the drug, for example, but then as it acted in their bodies, that's when the overdose happened. Is that how it works?
Yeah, there's multiple things there. So one, we could tell people what drug they were actually taking and provide education and information which could change their drug-taking behaviours. And in addition to that, even if it is GBL or GBH, we can tell them how strong it is so that we can provide them with information on what a typical dose might be, and provide them with the tools to be able to dose correctly rather than haphazardly drinking the GHB, which is what I suspect was happening at the event.
So the state government, one of the ministers has said getting the right messages about safe behaviour are clearly not working, and we will consider how we have to do more. If you could suggest the first port of call, what would it be?
Absolutely, pill testing, drug checking, and further harm reduction education being provided at festivals. That would be a key to this. And I was listening to 774 radio today where one of the Associate Commissioners has said that they would be willing to share the information that's being captured by police via the Health Department, and that the police and the Health Department need to work better together.
Dr. Stephen Bright, a Senior Lecturer in Addiction with Edith Cowan University, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.